Welcome to day 5 of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. The title of today's lesson is, I Made Great Works. Our passage for reading comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 2. We'll be reading verses 1 through 11. I said in my heart, Come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, It is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks, and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatever my eyes desired I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Rosebud. That famous word uttered by an aging man clutching a snow globe as he gasps his last breath on his deathbed. Thus begins the classic 1941 movie Citizen Kane, the story of a poor child who inherits a trust from a mining deed belonging to his mother and amasses a fortune by his 25th birthday from investments made from those profits of the mine. Over the years of his life, Charles Foster Kane continues to grow his empire to epic proportions, collecting the finest artifacts from around the world for his Florida mansion, which he named Xanadu. I won't spoil the plot of who or what Rosebud was, but in the end, Kane was alone with all his wealth. Over and over in polls, Citizen Kane has been ranked as the #1 film of all time. I've seen it more than once, and I have to agree. With that much influence, one wonders why this film has not had a greater influence and impact on the world as it pertains to buying happiness. Perhaps it's a lesson each of us must learn for ourselves. The next course of action that Solomon chose to achieve pleasure was that of surrounding himself with luxury via great works, houses, vineyards, gardens, parks, orchards of trees with fruit, irrigation systems for the forests, slaves, both male and female, and their families, herds and flocks, wealth of gold and silver, kings and provinces that paid him tribute. The money just kept flowing in. Men and women singers. And let's not forget the concubines. Absolutely no pleasure with which he denied himself, it seemed. Oddly enough, this is precisely what Samuel had prophesied from God a century before in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 10 through 17. So Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking for a king from him. He said, These will be the ways of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them to his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and to run before his chariots. And he will appoint for himself commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s. and some to plow his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his implements of war and the equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive orchards and give them to his servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and of your vineyards and give it to his officers and to his servants. He will take your male servants and female servants and the best of your young men and your donkeys and put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. And what would be the result of this? We read in verse 18 of 1 Samuel 8. And in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day. The people of Israel felt the oppression of Solomon. For we read in 1 Kings chapter 12 and verses 3 through 4, after Solomon's death. And they sent and called him, and Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam, Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore, lighten the hard service of your father, and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you. One thing that is important to note is that Solomon's pursuits did bring him pleasure. Solomon did enjoy not only what his eyes desired, but also his heart found pleasure in his toils. It is not as though he conceived, designed, and then brought them to completion, only to be wholly disappointed by them. Far from it. There was pleasure in such pursuits. To say that there wasn't, and never can be, is to miss the point of what is written. The conclusion Solomon reached after his ventures, we read in verse 11, Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it. And behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. As Solomon goes further into this essay on the whole of man, we too will gain a greater understanding of what it is Solomon is perceiving in his pursuits. In Solomon's lifetime, perhaps as at no other time, there is peace in Israel. During Saul's and his father David's reign, there was constant conflicts involving the Philistines and neighboring countries. Now, finally, there is peace and a chance for Israel and its king to become the nation of prosperity that God had desired his chosen people to achieve. 18 times in the book of Deuteronomy, Israel is warned to be careful not to forget the law of the Lord. One particular warning tells of the possibility that Israel shall forget the Lord. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 17 through 18. Beware lest you say in your heart, My power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth, that He may confirm His covenant that He swore to your fathers, as it is this day. It seems that Solomon is well on his way to leading Israel astray due to contentment, complacency, and commercial success. Have you ever wondered in modern times that a prosperous nation could find itself in decline due to thinking its affluence and success came by its own hands? And Lord willing, let's meet here again tomorrow for another lesson from the book of Ecclesiastes.